On Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My father left everything to my brother because he was a man and told me marry a rich man. He never imagined that his plan hid a financial secret that ended up with loan sharks and the police. My sister and I, aged 34 and 31 respectively, come from a well-off family. We belong to the comfortable segment of society. Both my grandfather and my father ran their own businesses. It seems that the entrepreneurial spirit runs in our blood. Everyone took it for granted that my sister and I would follow that path, although no one really thought that she would. When my sister turned 28, she decided to launch her own business. It wasn't something that happened overnight. She spent several years working in different companies, absorbing knowledge, making mistakes, correcting her errors, and learning what worked and what didn't. She saved as much as possible, eliminated unnecessary expenses, forgot about vacations, making sure she accumulated enough capital. Finally, she and a friend, tired of working for others, took the leap. They obtained bank financing, signed all the documentation, and created their commercial construction company. This type of business involves many responsibilities: projects, personnel, permits, budgets, and they experienced all kinds of problems at some point. But they managed to survive. My sister is really proud of what they built, and the best thing is that she did it without asking our father for a single penny. Our father is a traditional businessman. He believes in leaving a legacy, in passing on the family fortune to the next generation, in keeping the family name powerful through money and influence. Last year, he made the decision to retire. He had been talking about it for some time, expressing his desire to spend his old age in a warm climate. So when he announced his move to Florida, nothing seemed strange until he revealed the real surprise. He told my sister that he would leave the entire inheritance to me, without dividing it, without considering her. It is true that my sister had her own business and was not in any financial hardship, but that was not the point. The point was that our father hadn't even considered her as an option. She asked why he needed to be told. And our father's response? You have time to find a rich husband. You should do that. Our father, who raised her to be independent, was telling her that her financial security should come from a husband, that she should simply look for a wealthy man, get married, and let that be her future. Meanwhile, I, with a stable job but not exactly rolling in money, needed the inheritance more because... what? Because I'm a man? My sister told him that it was unfair. And do you know what he replied? He shrugged his shoulders and said, "That's the way the world is." She could have protested, but she didn't. What would it have achieved? The decision had already been made. So she simply cut ties with the family. I didn't support her either. It's not that she expected me to fight for her or anything like that, but it would have been nice if I had at least acknowledged the injustice of the whole situation. Instead, I acted as if it wasn't my problem. I got the inheritance, and that was that. After all, it was Dad's decision. But what I didn't know was that the supposed inheritance that I was so excited about wasn't exactly what I thought it was. Years ago, my sister helped Dad with accounting tasks in his company, taking care of small errands here and there. She's not a professional accountant, but she's organized and Dad needed someone he could trust. While she was reviewing the figures, she noticed something worrying. Dad's money was not safely tucked away in a savings account or conservative investments. It was tied up in all kinds of risky businesses, many of which seemed dubious. Dad was always a bit of a daredevil with money. He loved to pursue big opportunities, the kind that promise huge returns if you have patience. Real estate projects that never got off the ground, startups without a concrete plan, even cryptocurrencies. He became obsessed with cryptos for a while, investing like a tech mogul. My sister remembers hearing him talk about it, convinced he was ahead of his time while ignoring all the warning signs. At the time, my sister told herself it wasn't her problem. If he wanted to risk his money, it was his decision. But deep down, she knew that when I received that inheritance, a bitter surprise awaited me. Sure enough, about a year later, I showed up at his doorstep, practically begging for help. Over the past year, I had made promises based on the assumption that I was about to receive a fortune. I had started my own business, which, let's face it, was not the brightest idea. I had also taken out loans, not just advances, but from private lenders and even people with questionable methods. I had built my entire financial future on the belief that once Dad handed over the inheritance, I would be able to pay off all my debts. And then, when the moment came, Dad told me exactly what my sister had predicted. The money didn't exist in cash. It was invested in things that would eventually bear fruit. That was the word he used, eventually. No specific deadlines, no guarantees, just vague promises that someday things would improve. I had assumed that the money would be liquid, that I would be handed a check, or have access to a trust fund, or something similar. Instead, I discovered too late that what I had really inherited was a disaster, an unpredictable and unstable set of investments that might never be worth anything. I now owed an absurd amount of money, and my creditors were demanding immediate payment. So I turned to my sister. My desperation was obvious from the moment she saw me. At first, I tried to hide it, asking how her business was doing, making small talk as if we were just catching up. But it didn't take me long to reveal the real reason for my visit. I needed money. I didn't say it directly at first, but it was obvious. I started by talking about how well her company was doing, how smart she had always been with money, how proud she was of what she had built. I was preparing the ground, trying to flatter her, to make her feel good before making my request. Finally, I got to the point. I needed a loan. Not a small one either. I needed enough to cover the debts accumulated over the last year, and from the way I was talking, it was a lot of money. My sister listened to me, and all she could think about was how much of this was her fault. The worst part was that I had never supported her. When Dad decided to give everything to me, when he was told he should marry a rich woman instead of waiting for an inheritance, I just kept quiet, letting it happen. I never questioned whether it was fair. I never thought about whether I deserved better. But now that she was in trouble, I suddenly wanted to act as if we were in this together. She wondered what would have happened if the roles had been reversed. If she was struggling and I had money, would I have helped her? And the answer was obvious. I wouldn't have. So she said no to me. I didn't take it well. I tried to make her feel guilty, saying that I would have done the same for her. I even got a little angry, as if she owed me something just because we were siblings. But it wasn't her mess, and I wasn't going to clean it up. I left after that, completely defeated. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Maybe I'll find a solution, or maybe I won't. Maybe Dad's investments will pay off eventually, and I'll get the money he promised. But that's not my sister's problem. Over the next few days, my sister continued to discover more and more of the complete disaster I had created. At first, she thought I had only ruined my personal finances and taken out some bad loans. That was bad enough. But then she discovered that I had done something even worse. I had used our parents' house as collateral for a loan with a loan shark, and now those people were threatening to sell it. That house meant everything to my sister. It wasn't just a building, it was the place where we grew up, where so many memories lived. It was the place where she spent the last years with our mother, before she passed away. I could still imagine her in the kitchen making tea as she always did, humming an old melody softly. I could still hear her voice in the hallways, calling us in for dinner. The idea of losing that house was eating her up inside. She doesn't understand what I was thinking. She knew what that house meant to her. She knew how much I loved it. And yet I risked everything because I thought I had an easy way out with Dad's supposed inheritance. I was so convinced that I would receive all that money that I never stopped to think about the consequences if things didn't go according to plan. My sister wasn't going to let me destroy one of the few things she had left from our mother, so she decided to intervene. She contacted me and told me she was willing to help with the house. At first I seemed relieved, probably thinking she would get me out of trouble completely. But she wasn't doing it for me, she was doing it for herself. She wasn't going to let a loan shark take away such a meaningful place. So she contacted the lender directly. These people weren't exactly friendly, and they didn't care about her emotional attachment to the house. They just wanted their money back. But after much negotiation, she managed to work out a payment plan with them. Once everything was settled, she came back to me and explained the agreement. The house now belonged to her. She was paying for it, so she would live there. I could stay in the guest house until my problems were solved, but that was it. I didn't take it well at all. I tried to argue that the house was big enough for both of us, that we could live together, but she told me that it was her money and her house. From her perspective, I had endangered the property. I had made reckless decisions, and she was fixing everything. If she was going to take responsibility, she would set the rules. And the first rule, limits. She made it clear to me that she didn't want to live with me. She needed space and didn't want to deal with my daily mess under the same roof. The guest house was more than enough for me. It had a separate entrance, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. She wasn't throwing me out on the street, she just wouldn't allow me to live in the main house with her. I moved into the guest house, but I made sure she knew exactly how I felt about it. Every chance I got, I made passive-aggressive comments. I commented on how she was enjoying her little kingdom, while I was banished to the background like an unwanted guest. I even tried to involve mutual friends, telling them that she had stolen the house from me and left me with nothing. I still don't understand. She didn't take anything from me. I lost it when I used the house as collateral. I risked something I had no right to risk. She was the one who saved it. She paid the price. I still act as if she is the villain in my story, as if she had done something wrong. I refuse to take responsibility for any of this. Now my sister wonders, is she really the bad guy here? Should she have let me stay in the house? Or is she right to finally impose limits? Update 1. A lot has happened since then, and honestly, things haven't gotten any better for me. If they have changed, it is for the worse. During these 2 months, my sister has been living in the family home, now hers, where she has invested time and resources to make it feel more welcoming. Since our mother passed away, our father neglected the maintenance, and it showed, but I haven't made things easier for her. A couple of weeks ago, I caught her snooping around the house, and to this day, she doesn't know what she was looking for. It was nighttime, and she was in her room, getting ready for bed, going about her usual nighttime routine. She was about to go to bed when she heard a noise on the ground floor. At first she thought it might be the house creaking, given its age. But then she heard footsteps. He almost had a heart attack, thinking that someone had broken in to steal. But when he crept out of his bedroom and looked down the hallway, he saw me prowling around in the dark with my phone's flashlight on. He stood watching me for a moment, trying to figure out what I was doing. I was in the study, opening drawers and looking through documents. His first thought was that maybe I had forgotten something there from when Dad lived in the house, but then he realized that I had no reason to be in that room, as I hadn't lived there for years. She turned on the lights and exclaimed, "What on earth are you doing?" She probably said it too loudly because I jumped, but she wanted to make it clear that she had caught me. I tried to cover it up, mumbling something about looking for an old document, but she didn't believe me at all. If I needed something, I could have asked her for it. Instead, I was snooping around the house in the middle of the night like a thief. She asked me what I was really looking for, and I became defensive. I asked her to calm down and acted as if I were exaggerating, but she knew something wasn't right. She checked the drawers where I had been looking and couldn't determine if anything was missing, but she wasn't reassured. She didn't know if I was looking for documents, money, or some advantage to use against her, but whatever it was, it made a bad impression on her. After that incident, she made sure to lock her office and any drawer with important documents. But that wasn't all. As if that weren't enough, Dad decided to get involved unexpectedly. I should have told him my side of the story because, a week later, he traveled from Florida. Yes, he actually flew here just to pressure my sister into giving me money. He showed up at the house one morning unannounced. He opened the door and there he was, with his suitcase, behaving as if it were a family reunion. He gave her a big hug, all smiles, as if he weren't completely surprising her. His initial attitude revealed to her that something was wrong. Dad never visits like that, especially now that he's retired in Florida living his dream. And naturally, it didn't take him long to start talking about me. "Listen to me," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table as if preparing for a serious conversation. "Your brother is going through a difficult time. He just needs some help to get back on his feet." My sister stared at him, because the last time they spoke he basically told her that she was on her own and that I deserved the inheritance. She replied clearly that she had already fulfilled her part, saving the house. He had given me a place to stay, and he wouldn't rescue me financially. But Dad insisted. He argued that we were family and he couldn't abandon me like that. But what hurt my sister the most was that he said our mother would have suffered with this whole situation. That touched a nerve. She hates it when they mention Mom, especially to manipulate her. Mom was kind, true. She believed in family, true. But she also valued responsibility. She was one of those people who helped those who made an effort to help themselves, not those who expected solutions without solving their own problems. My sister said exactly that to Dad, and obviously, he didn't like it. She reminded him that I wasn't his responsibility, I wasn't his son, I was hers. And if she hadn't left me an adequate inheritance, it wasn't her problem to help me. At that moment, Dad's attitude changed completely. He sighed, shook his head, and said, "I just don't understand why you're being so insensitive about this." After that, Dad never mentioned the subject again. He stayed in a hotel for several days, behaved distantly, and then left. He didn't even say goodbye in person, just sent a message saying he was returning to Florida. I was obviously furious when I heard that my sister hadn't given in. I've been even more resentful since then, barely speaking to her except to make some passive-aggressive comment. The other day, she walked past me outside and I muttered, "It seems that money really changes people," as if she wasn't the same person who saved me from losing the house. By now, my sister is exhausted. Tired of justifying herself, tired of feeling guilty, tired of everything. She has spent much of her life worrying about being fair, kind, or helpful. But where was that consideration when she needed support? Where was her golden lifeline? Oh, that's right, she never had one. So that's the update. I'm still in the guest house, still angry with my sister, and still waiting for the world to offer me a solution. And honestly, that's my problem now, not hers. Another problem I may have is still being angry, but now without a place to live. Something that could happen if I continue to be ungrateful. Update 2. About a week ago, my sister noticed that several of her luxury handbags were missing. Initially, she thought she might have misplaced them. She doesn't use them often, and some were stored in her closet, so she assumed they might be under other belongings. But the more she looked, the more convinced she became that they were not there. And they were not just any bags, some were gifts from our mother, pieces she had collected over the years. Our mother was not fond of exclusive brands, but she cherished some bags especially, and when she passed away, she left them to my sister. They had sentimental value, far beyond any price or brand. She began to search exhaustively. She rummaged through her wardrobe, inspected the boxes under her bed, even went through the whole dressing room in case she had kept them in some unusual place. Nothing. But her suspicions soon turned to me. Who else could she distrust? She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but let's face it. I was the only other person living on the property besides her, and given my track record of disastrous decisions, it wasn't hard to imagine that I could have taken them. She came to the guest house and knocked on my door. When I opened it, she asked me directly if I knew anything about her missing handbags, and naturally, I feigned complete surprise. I played it cool with false confusion, as if I was completely unaware of the matter. I even had the audacity to reply, "Why would I take your handbags? What would I do with them?" She didn't believe me for a moment. She looked at my face carefully and could see that something wasn't right. I avoided looking her in the eye, and my voice sounded too unconcerned, as if I were trying too hard to appear innocent. She didn't press me immediately because she knew that if I had stolen them, I wouldn't admit it, so she said to me, "Well, if you see them, let me know," and she left. That same night, while I was out, he decided to search the guest house. He knew that if she had stolen the handbags, they would be there. He searched my wardrobe, under the bed. He even looked in the bathroom cabinets, in case she had been foolish enough to hide them in plain sight. But he found nothing. For a moment, he began to doubt his suspicions. But then he saw my laptop on the desk. Some might consider that checking my computer was an invasion of privacy. But at that point, he didn't care. If she was stealing it, he had every right to find out. This genius hadn't even set a password. He accessed the browser history, and within seconds he found all the necessary evidence. There were searches such as, how much is a Chanel handbag worth? How to sell used designer handbags, and even best places to sell handbags quickly. She continued investigating, and then she discovered it. My eBay profile. Right there, in plain sight, were our mother's handbags advertised for sale. She was so furious that she needed to go out for some fresh air. If I had been in front of her at that moment, she probably would have hit me with my own laptop, sales announcements included. She photographed everything as evidence. The search history, the eBay ads, absolutely everything. She needed proof in case I tried to avoid responsibility. Then she waited. Hours later, I finally returned. As soon as I walked in, she confronted me. She didn't even let me speak. She showed me her phone with the screenshots and demanded, "Explain this." I turned pale. I stammered, trying to come up with some excuse, but she cut me off. She told me she didn't want to hear pathetic lies. She gave me only one option: out of there by the next morning, or she would call the police. I tried to retract it, saying that I was just looking to earn some extra money and that I would eventually tell her. I even had the nerve to say I was going to give you some of the money. She didn't want a share of the money. She didn't care about the money. She ordered me to shut up. She was fed up with my lies, my excuses, with me. She repeated, "Leave tomorrow or I'll call the police." She also warned me that I should find a way to get the bags back, because otherwise she would also report the theft. She must have seen in my expression that I wasn't joking because I didn't protest anymore. I simply left in a rage, muttering something and slamming the door. The next morning, she got up early, hoping that I had left, but I hadn't. So she had to call the police before going to work. She doesn't know how the officers proceeded, but they weren't going to leave without me. She is now writing this from work, so she doesn't know much more, but she hopes to have some news when she gets more information. Update 3. The good news is that she has recovered some handbags through eBay, who contacted several buyers to inform them that they had purchased stolen items. As far as she knows, eBay has refunded the money and compensated the customers for their inconvenience. Other bags were impossible to recover because I sold them personally, and I didn't want to reveal to whom. Or I really didn't know. At least most of our mother's bags have been returned to her. The bad news is that I only received a criminal record, probation, and I had to pay back the value of those expensive designer handbags. My sister considers this bad news because she would have preferred me to be sent to prison, but our father, with whom she does not speak, probably used his contacts. At least I had to sell my van, the only thing I had left, to pay for the bags we couldn't get back. Update 4. Apparently, I have managed to escape the loan sharks, which is both surprising and predictable. My sister had heard absolutely nothing from me in months. No messages, no calls, no family rumors, nothing. The only reason she found out anything was because one of the loan sharks showed up at her door. He introduced himself and explained that he had been trying to contact me for a while, but that I had basically disappeared, not returning calls, not responding to messages, nothing. Then, for some reason, this individual thought she might know my whereabouts. She firmly made it clear that she had no idea where he was and had no intention of finding out. He seemed skeptical, but there wasn't much else she could do. She wasn't going to look for me just to help him locate me, so the loan shark left. Even after everything I did, my sister was slightly concerned. Not out of pity, but because I had disappeared so suddenly. That's not normal, not even for me. So she called Dad. All he said was that he knew I was safe, but nothing else. No details, no explanations, nothing. Just, he's safe. That was all I needed to hear because, finally, I'm no longer his problem. I made my choices, I burned all my bridges, and now I must face the consequences. Update 5. Another loan shark called my sister's house asking for my whereabouts. She was already tired of these people calling, as she had already told them that she did not know my location. However, when she found out, she immediately provided them with the information when they called back, and with that, they stopped doing so instantly. Recently, he found out that I was living with our father in Florida. I suspected as much, but until recently I didn't know for sure, nor did I have his address. It's not that he likes to throw a man to the sharks, but if that man is me, they can swim together, and no lifeguard will throw me a life preserver. Update 6. It's been a while since you updated the situation, but they wanted to know about me and the loan sharks. Don't worry, they didn't find me swimming with the crocodiles in Florida, but they did track me down and collected every last penny I owed, although, to be precise, they collected every last penny from our father. The last thing she knows is that our father had to sell his house to pay my debts, and they have had to move to another state that is cheaper than Florida. Last Christmas, he sent her a greeting, and she replied. But then he tried to start a conversation by message, and she sensed his intentions. She replied that if he was looking for money, I could marry a rich person. For some reason, she does not expect to receive any messages from our father or me for her birthday this year.